All right. Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy. Back here with our co-hosts, Matty B and Rick David. And we also have a new guest today, and that is the Southbound Sports Show. Going to be, I'm your Nick Bisko. He's here, N-O Bisko on Twitter. Go ahead and give him a follow. You want to give a little introduction, Nick? Tell a little bit about yourself.
Big sports fan, big Maryland guy. Can't wait to basketball season.
That's the Maryland motto right there. Haven't hung a banner in a decade. Can't wait till basketball.
That's not true. We just won lacrosse championships.
That's not basketball.
That's not basketball.
Well, no, but we're talking championships in general here. We can't just say we never win anything. I mean, this guy's bragging about Michigan winning gymnastics.
Hey, Michigan just hung the basketball banner for last year, the Big Ten championship. I think it's either this weekend.
Big Ten championships, national championships.
So then Maryland has no hope. They can't even win a conference banner.
Basketball? Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes this year.
All right. Well, Nick, we kick off the show with a high tempo. Go around the horn here and give us just your top sports topic of the week. We'll start it off with Rick today. What do you got?
The passing away of Roy Halladay. So 2-time Cy Young Award passed away. His plane crashed in the Gulf of Mexico outside of Florida. 2-time Cy Young Award winner. Played on some good teams, especially with the Phillies there when they were making their run there. But he has passed away age of 40. So we'll see what happens if he gets the exemption, if he gets next year's. He won't get this year's by the Old Timers Committee. It'd have to be next year's since the Old Timers Committee already picked their 15. So see if they'll give him the exemption to get on that list or anything along those lines. But 40, leaves behind a wife and 2 kids as well. So
did any news come out on that? He was the only guy in the plane, right?
Oh, he was the only person in the plane. That's it. So they're not sure what happened or what malfunctioned or anything along those lines. So
yeah, that's a big shock coming out today, but it's just crazy. We'll go ahead with you, Matt. What's your high tempo topic for this week?
My alma mater, heading into the PSAC Conference Championships this week, playing Westchester. Right now in Division II, they are number 1 in the coaches poll, looking to wrap up the conference title and head into the playoffs. Ready to make some noise. They seem to have they don't have any injury issues to deal with, so I'm thinking that they could possibly make it 9 weeks of playoffs.
That broke up a little bit on my end, but he's talking about IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I think that's what it stands for. Being in the football playoffs for their Division II, or are they? They're not in the football championship subdivision, are they? That's cool. Yeah, that's I think they're not Division II. Okay. Nick, you have any topics for this week?
Nope. 2.
Well, I'm going to try to avoid all Maryland football topics for this week because I don't even know who's going to be starting at quarterback. But I will talk about and you might be covering this later, Rich. I'm not quite sure. But I just want to stick up for my man, Deion Sanders. You know, calling out Tony Romo. A lot of big Tony Romo fans out there, seeing how great he was. But Dak Prescott has already surpassed anything that Tony Romo has done or going to do in the future if he comes back and plays quarterback. But, he's got to stay in his lane. That's pretty much what I got to say about it.
I did see that, and that's actually going to be my topic for this week is just I want to thank or congratulate the Houston Astros on winning the World Series. I think I called that. I don't know if it was conspiracy like my original thoughts were, but it does go ahead to prove that you can tank in baseball. It hasn't worked for the 76ers. We've talked about that a countless times here. Tanking might not work in basketball, but it works in baseball.
Yet.
Trust the process. 2052 champs. Your 76ers just need 30 years in that system, and then they'll get that ring. But the Astros definitely turned it around. I think the crazy thing that I wanted to point out was based on them tanking, I think it was Sports Illustrated. They actually predicted a year or two ago that the Astros were going to win this World Series. I think they printed a cover that said 2017 World Series champions, not based on the hurricane relief and my conspiracy, but based on them tanking and getting so many high draft picks and retooling their minor league system. But
that was in 2014.
Yeah, is that how long ago they printed that? So 3 years ago they predicted it based on them. And I think that was around the time of their awful season too. When everyone knew they were tanking, I think they traded everyone. It might have been a couple years prior. How long does it take to build a championship team? I would insert a Pittsburgh Pirates joke here, but I don't know if I
think it was 5 years ago they traded everybody away.
And the Pirates traded everybody away in, 1991? So, still waiting. But we'll go ahead. My big topic for this week is going to be backup quarterbacks. And I teased it a little bit last week. I wanted to bring this in because it's interesting to see how the media portrays it. And it wasn't even college football that brought this up. Last week I had it on the docket because Washington State with Coach Leach, huge Mike Leach fan, he was bringing in his backup quarterback. Behind he has Luke Falk, who's basically an All-American quarterback. He was rotating him in the game. And one of the games that Washington State lost this year, he threw 4 interceptions. The backup quarterback. Now, Falk was healthy. He went ahead and did that for no reason. So I had this on the docket to bring in. I was kind of see what happened. But I had to do it this week because now switching to the NFL, what really got me was Deshaun Watson tears an ACL. He was looking like a Rookie of the Year candidate down in Houston Texans. He came in, won them a couple games. I think he had the most touchdowns over 4 games by any rookie quarterback. It was a stat like that. I know I'm supposed to be the stats guy. I guess I should write these down better. But he came in, gets injured in practice. I don't even know if it was contact, non-contact injury, but he's out. Now, the backup, Houston doesn't have one. Their system is a mess. And Bill O'Brien came from Penn State. Anyone listen to this through Pennsylvania, you know he was at Penn State. He was supposed to be a quarterback guru. He went to the NFL, and it hasn't panned out. He's had multiple quarterbacks. They signed Brock Osweiler. Didn't work out for whatever reason. He just signed Matt McGloin for a total of like 4 days or so. And now they just picked up Josh Jackson, who hasn't played since 2013 and hasn't completed a pass in the NFL since 2011. That's 6 years he's sitting out. So I was going to bring up the Tony Romo thing for this. You have Tony Romo, who's a year removed. Now he's broadcasting. He's calling people out. He's calling out Deion Sanders. He's just shouting everybody out for some reason. I don't know what his deal is. But what do you guys think? I know the obvious person to point out here is Kaepernick. He's in his own situation with some of the stuff that he declined his deal. He's been around the controversy for the national anthem, but he declined his deal. He opted out to try to get more money. I don't know if that's what's scaring teams away or if they just don't want to touch him because of the media hype, but I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Matt, what do you think?
Well, I'm starting to lean more towards now thinking maybe the NFL did have something to try to blackball Kaepernick. Is they're digging into the bottom of the barrel trying to find quarterback replacements. There were times where I thought, well, it kind of makes sense not to bring him in here, kind of like trying to rationalize why you wouldn't want to bring him in, aside from the fact that he's going to bring the media circus and everything else to the teams. With where they're at now, the argument when Watson got hurt was, we're not going to bring Kaepernick in because he's too far removed. And one of the quotes that I saw from O'Brien was that he was worried that with Kaepernick not playing in so long, how rusty he's going to be. Well, this Jackson signing now it completely flies into the face of that because now he's even further removed than Kaepernick was. And it's like you're trying to just find anybody to fill that void, and it's not looking very pretty.
Yeah, and there are other guys. Josh Jackson, I couldn't even remember who he was, and now they're signing him. But I don't know. Nick, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's tough. It's tough not to see Kaepernick go for the Houston Texans. I mean, it makes sense. I guess like him and Deshaun Watson are similar players. I'm not saying he's on the level of Deshaun Watson. At one point in time, as a 49ers fan, I would have thought, he was on that level. It could have been just the culture of the 49ers at that time. It's hard not to say the NFL, like Matt said, that, isn't blackballing him at this point. But I think to get him back on a team, I think that whoever the starting quarterback is would have to do a dual press conference with that quarterback, saying that I support this guy taking my spot till I get back healthy. And if you did that, let's say, for instance, Aaron Rodgers went to the podium in front of the Green Bay Nation and said, hey, I need Colin Kaepernick to suit up for us. If we're going to make a playoff run, either the Green Bay fans are going to be like, no, we don't want him. Okay, and then we tank. Or, hey, we're going to take what Aaron Rodgers says and we're going to start calling Kaepernick and see where it goes from there. I think that's like your only avenue because let's be honest here, no one really cares. I mean, coaches have some pull, but no one really cares. If the starting quarterback, your players on the field, someone like Aaron Rodgers said, or for instance, Deshaun Watson, or even let's say something happened to Tom Brady and he needed a quarterback since they just traded Garoppolo. And he went out there and said that, I don't even think New England would care. So that's just my perspective on it. At this point in time, it looks like you have a better chance of seeing Jared Lorenzen from Kentucky suit up.
Well, those are some good points. And yeah, this looked like it might be Kaepernick's only chance because him and Watson are similar players. I know Kaepernick struggles with accuracy. That's his big knock. That's what everyone's been saying. Notice that's the same argument against that they had for Tim Tebow. They were saying, oh, he's not accurate enough. He might be able to win us playoff games the first time in forever for the Broncos, but he's not accurate enough to play every day. That's what they're saying now for Kaepernick. And to me, it just seems fishy that they're going to go to that.
Well, it almost has to be because, didn't we see Kaepernick play in a Super Bowl? Didn't we see him go through the playoffs multiple times and beat Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, and he was only one play away in that Super Bowl from winning. I think I rewatched that series actually just to see. I think the first one was a handoff to Gore, and then it was a couple passes by him that were just close.
Just missed.
Yeah, just missed. So, it wasn't like he wasn't doing anything in that game and it was a total blowout. You can look at the other side of it. When Cam Newton made his Super Bowl, he just got embarrassed. So, at least Kaepernick showed up. I know they got down early. He battled back.
Well, the first play of the game was a pick six.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I don't know. I really think if some of these teams really want to make a playoff run for their fan bases, they'll sign them. If not, it's tough to watch football. I'm going to be honest with you right now with these backup quarterbacks.
It's not just the quarterbacks. The play across the league is sloppy. I tried to watch, our Steelers are on a bye. I've been trying to do a little bit more of the Pittsburgh stuff before we get in our topics. I just forgot to do it this week. Steelers are on a bye, still in first place. I would say they almost have it locked up, but I don't want to jinx them because the North looks so bad. But as I watch football, I try to put on a couple different games, and the play is just so bad it doesn't hold my interest. That's the argument people say. Go ahead, Matt.
I almost wonder at this point, how much of it is stubborn NFL coaching? Because knowing going in that, if you're O'Brien and you know that you don't have Watson, how much of the stubbornness is it that you refuse to tailor what your playbook is going to look like to the talent that you have? To me, what it looks like is that you have this round peg, and regardless of who it is, you're going to jam them into the square hole just because that's what your offense is, and this is like the play call that you think. And to a certain extent, you can call whatever your playbook is if you have your Tom Brady, your Drew Brees, your Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. But when you go from those guys to your second or third string players, they don't have the capability to make the checks and the reads and the progressions that those number ones do. Hence the reasons that they're a backup to begin with. I think you almost have to have some sort of contingency plan or think of how am I still going to make this offense work if my starting quarterback doesn't go, if my starting quarterback goes down. I mean, it goes down even further into like a college or high school level. You think you may be, if you're lucky enough to have a good quarterback on your team, you got to think, what happens if a team cheap shots him? If something happens and he goes down, what does our offense look like with a different player or a different caliber style player at quarterback? Because it can change completely the face of what your team and offense looks like if someone goes down. And I think the coaches need to quit being so stubborn and really just try to look at what they have and try to tailor that to, what they're trying to just get enough points to win.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Matt's a coach, so he has some football background into the things behind the scenes. But with that, a lot of coaches run the similar system, and I think that's another reason why you're seeing these sloppy plays. You get guys that are coming from college that are used to spread offenses. They're used to playing maybe some zone defenses. They're used to playing these different schemes because there's how many different styles across the college landscape, and that wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago. Now you're coming from college, and you have to learn a whole new system. I think, Matt, you brought it up like a week or two ago when you were saying that college kids aren't conditioned to play this many weeks. They're also not conditioned to get hit in the mouth playing the pro style offense. There's only 2 or 3 programs that actually run a pure pro style, if that. And even those ones still have some spread offenses. Because here, like at Michigan, I watch Harbaugh. He does some spread stuff, but he's supposed to be a pro style. But in the NFL, unless you have a dynamic quarterback, you really don't even do any of that. So I think it's a style mismatch. They're kind of learning the fundamentals, and you have a young league because people don't last anymore. Plus, with the injury thing, now people don't even play. If you get injured and your team's bad, previous years people would battle to get back in trying to earn a contract. Now players are just like, we're out of it. I'm just going to rest the rest of this year and come back next year. And that hurts the overall, the product. Rick, you're nodding your head. What are your thoughts on this? I'll give you some time to talk.
I just think that I agree with you. The coach, these offensive coordinators are stuck in the mud, and they're going to do the same old thing over and over again. If you're a Steelers fan, you watch Todd Haley. It's the same exact game plan almost every week, and it's the same exact thought process and everything. Even if they're reading it no matter what, we're going to do the same thing because that's what we do, which is stupid thinking. You do the complete opposite, or you try to do what somebody else is doing, or you see what somebody else did and let's steal that idea. I think the other thing is that, like you said, Rich, too many injuries this year puts in too many backups who have no idea. And the thing is, too, you got to look at, too, training camps are not what they used to be. I know they were talking about somebody with training camp. I think it was Landry Jones, like how many snaps he gets per week with the first team offense wasn't even 10. I mean, because Big Ben's taking them all, which is stupid because you're one hit away or one throw away. Heck, you only have to be hit. You could just rip your, bicep muscle. You're done. And you're done for the season because...
No, that's not true, Rick. You could rub some deer antler spray right on that, like Ray Lewis in that Super Bowl, and come back and win the Super Bowl. Just a little deer antler spray right on that bicep. It will heal right up.
Okay. But that's what it is.
And here's the other thing.
Go ahead, Matt.
Here's the other thing with that, too. When you're looking at it's the way people perceive some of these offenses as well. I was seeing things with Carson Wentz having a really good game for Philadelphia this week. And a lot of the knock with what they're talking about with him was saying how he's running a college offense in the pros, how he's doing a lot of RPOs, and he's doing all these like reading plays where it's a true read option, and he's able to carry the ball. It's like, well, why wouldn't you try to take, if he's coming from a spread, why wouldn't you try to incorporate that? Because that's what he's coming from. That's obviously what he showed he's good at. Why would you not try to incorporate that into your game plan? Why would you say, oh, you came from a spread, but now we're going to put you under center and you're going to have to run these pro-style routes just because this is the NFL? Tailor it to what makes them successful, and you're starting to see, I think, a little bit more of that with certain teams like the Rams, like the Eagles that are having success because they're just letting the quarterbacks do what they were successful with.
Yeah, and I hate to see it from the Eagles because I hate the Eagles. Just growing up in Pennsylvania, and their fans are the most annoying fans. And I loved when Andy Reid was there. He'd get them so close. Everyone gets so excited knowing that there was going to be a letdown in the playoffs. And now I don't know. They're looking good this year. That's actually one of the games that I watched. They just seem to have the coaching adjustments down. And I don't like to see that. But maybe we'll finally get that all Pennsylvania Super Bowl, because that was a big thing around the mid-2000s. Everyone was all hyped for that. Even though, because the Steelers are going to beat them. We're better in the end. That's an easy Super Bowl win, and it's even better just to beat the Eagles. But I don't like seeing them on top of their division. I don't want them to be back. And it seems everything's working out for them. They pick up Jay Ajayi. He runs for like a 60-yard touchdown. They're like, he's barely going to play this first game. Touchdown. Doesn't even matter. He just scores a touchdown. So I don't like to see them. Let me see what else I had around the league. People are hyping up the Lions again. They're 4-4. I think they might be tied with the Packers now. I think they're 4-4, but not a big deal. I guess that division's just injury riddled. So who cares if the Lions win it? They're just going to go ahead and get bounced in the playoffs anyway. And then, dude, the Falcons are looking bad. I don't know what's happening to them. They're having the Super Bowl hangover. It didn't look like it was going to happen. I know we talked about it being a possibility, but that kind of just went away in the preseason based on how good they looked. I don't know. Kyle Shanahan, he couldn't have been the reason they dropped off. I mean, he's not that good. He's 0-8 or whatever for the 49ers. So I don't know. I don't have an answer. Nick, you watch the 49ers. What do you think?
There's no one on that team. The 49ers have zero on that team. They're tanking the year. They signed Garoppolo. They're not going to play him. They're going to try to trade Carlos Hyde for some picks, and they're going to try to land that number 1 overall pick for next year. Maybe take Barkley and then have Garoppolo. That'd be maybe my guess. If they wanted to do that, because I know they wanted to sign Kirk Cousins.
Well, yeah, but, I saw the thing was they kind of went out, and I think I don't know if it was a press release, but they said Garoppolo is on the market. They said they're not going to sign him for a long term because they want him as trade bait, which doesn't make sense to me. I mean, they should do what they did in the late 2008 season, 2007, whenever Singletary was there, showing everyone how big of a man he was, where they went out and just started to get linemen, defensive linemen and offensive linemen. And then they built like a grading offense. Then you can just you can miss on quarterback if you have that and get a game manager. But I don't know what they're doing out there. They let Bowman go. Navarro Bowman, Penn State guy.
I think they're tanking, man.
Yeah, he was, I don't know. But he's still around. I think he got signed by another team too. He kind of like stepped down, or they let him go. And then he got picked right back up. But anyone else have anything else? Go into college football. All right, we'll probably circle back around because the last topic I have is coaching rumors, which kind of delves into both. But for college football, I have 2 topics. Basically, it's just one big topic. The first one is the Big Ten's bad weekend. It seems to be overhyped right now. Every time I open up Twitter or I go on to ESPN or wherever as I'm doing research for the show, there's at least one article on how the Big Ten is out of the playoffs. Newsflash, Wisconsin is still undefeated. If Wisconsin's undefeated at the end of the year, they're not getting left out. I saw that 2 or 3 articles about it. There's no reason they're ranked low, because the only reason they're ranked low is just to get people talking. If they go undefeated, they beat Michigan. They'll have to beat either Ohio State or probably Michigan State, I think it looks like right now, in the Big Ten championship. Those other teams ahead of them are going to beat each other up. TCU and Oklahoma play this week. Miami's going to eventually play Clemson in the championship. Georgia's going to play Alabama. It's just not going to work out. So the Big Ten, yeah, they had a bad weekend. It works out for Michigan. Everything that had to happen happened so far. Michigan still plays Ohio State, so I'm holding on the champ to that slim chance that maybe Michigan can play in the Big Ten championship. I know it probably won't happen just because of the losses, but I don't know what happened to Penn State. Rick, we talked about Franklin at the end of that game. He ran across the field. They actually said he ran across the field to prevent players from going into the tunnel so they could go out and shake hands. And I also saw that he was complaining about the delay, saying that he didn't know how to handle it and that he's going to address it and find out a way in case there's a weather delay for another 3 hours. He let the guys get too loose. I know we talked about Barkley off before the show. There was actually videos of Barkley like catching food in his mouth in the locker room during that delay. They were like players on the team were like throwing candy or something in his mouth, which he posted it on Twitter, and then I think he just immediately deleted it, and I wasn't able to find it. So if you want to find it, go ahead and look it up. I'm sure it's out there. But Rick, what are your thoughts on Penn State this weekend? Not a good look.
Not a good look. Offensive line still sucks. When you face the number one running team, you can't run against on the best in rush defense. What do you not do? You don't run up the middle where everybody and their brother from Michigan State's living, especially when your offense is weak. And what did they do? Stubborn offensive coordinator. We're going to do this delayed handoff. We're going to let the Michigan State guys pretty much just rush right at us, and then we're going to hand off the ball and gain like a yard. It was stupid. They should have did some play action, find the quick receivers over the middle. Didn't do it. And they just kept running for the yard or two. And that's not going to win you the thing. Everybody, you could read that. I was watching the game, and I'm like, run. I was like, it's going to be a running play. It should be a passing play. It's going to be a running play. It's like you're a dead obvious offense. I mean, it's like you're playing on rookie level on Madden against Penn State on second halves right now because you could see what the heck they're doing and just look and do it. I don't get Moorhead's offense. Stubbornness. If you don't know what to do during a delay, that's your bad coaching. You should be talking to your players. You should be figuring out. You should be game planning. Maybe you should do some stretching exercises. Maybe you should tell your players just, stand here. We'll go watch some game film. Why don't we see what we did wrong so far and try to capitalize it? Because 1 yard and 2 yard runs don't work out in college football. Just stupidity. And you posted during the game you sent to me, Rich. It was James Franklin is 0-10 against top 10 opponents or top 25, whatever.
Top 25, I think, on the road. He's 0-10, 0-5 at Penn State.
Well, I can tell you why. Because you can't coach these big games and win. Let's be honest. I see 3 laughing faces on 3 Penn State haters.
Well, I'm not a Penn State hater, but if he sucks so bad, why do you think A&M wants him?
Because A&M's desperate. They're like the ugly girl who's looking for the prom date in the last week before the prom. I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I don't get it. We're not obviously going to be in the top 4, and we'll be lucky to make the top 15 because games against Rutgers are really not going to bring us up anything. Those are, gimme wins against Rutgers, so. And we're not going to make the Big Ten championship because you lost to Michigan and Ohio State, so both of them are going to beat you out.
Well, here's the breakdown because I've been looking into it. So right now, the Michigan State-Ohio State game, that's the deciding factor to who's number 1. If whoever wins that game is going to have the number 1 tiebreaker overall, then it falls to the loser of that game, which is either Ohio State or Michigan State. Next is Penn State and Michigan, and depending which team they tie against. Let's say Ohio State wins this weekend. There could be a 4-way tie. I think the 4-way tie in that scenario would still go to Ohio State. I don't think it takes non-conference games into account. Now, the Big Ten thing, it's not very clear. I think it compares records against the 4 other teams, and Michigan still has to play Ohio State. So Michigan could still play its way in. It's just highly unlikely because I think they would need Penn State to lose another one, which right now you don't know if that's going to happen. They only play Nebraska, though, Maryland, and Rutgers. And Maryland could have upset them at the beginning of the year, but they're missing a couple quarterbacks, which we'll get into in a second. And then you have Michigan State, who's really only going to play. They play this Ohio State game. They could lose. Both their big wins was a heavy rainstorm against Michigan, and then this week it was that huge delay, which they did say that Penn State coaches ordered pizza. They got food, and they had a little celebration there. They're up 14-7. So they got their celebrating in on Saturday. It just was in the middle of the game instead of after the game. But, Nick, since you're on, what are your thoughts on Maryland and how they've looked in the Big Ten so far? They've only been in for a couple years. Doesn't have to be just this season.
It's bad. We need to have like a squad of quarterbacks. Looks like we might be going to our intramural flag football champion quarterback this week. I think I'm waiting to get some information on what his date is. But it's just been rough in Maryland with quarterbacks. It's really bad. A lot of injuries. Not I wouldn't say pocket injuries. It looks like mostly, Maryland mostly has scrambling quarterbacks, and when they've been outside the pocket and they've just got sandwich type hits, torn ACLs. One of our past quarterbacks is our current, I think it's like right side linebacker. He may have to leave the defense and come quarterback. We lost another quarterback last game during the Rutgers. They're saying that he may be able to play this week, but he looks like he's been fighting an injury the last 3 games. It's rough in Maryland. I mean, I would be. Put it this way: if any of the teams the next couple of weeks lose to Maryland, say Michigan, I think they should probably fire Jim Harbaugh on the spot, because if they lose to Maryland, they got to fire him. There's no way around it, because that should be an easy cakewalk win for any of the teams going forward. Just because at that point in time, what can you do with a quarterback that you're going to be bringing in a guy that never even played quarterback all year? So it's kind of the situation.
Well, I want to ask a question here, and this isn't my theory. This is a theory I saw some Maryland fans throw out there. I told you before the game, before the show, because I wanted to give you some time to think about it. Some fans out there are theorizing that Maryland's going through a slew of injuries because of the Under Armour gear they're wearing. You see it in the NBA right now with a bunch of people wearing Nike jerseys. The jerseys are just ripping. You saw it in the NBA a few years ago where one brand shoes were just exploding. Basically an injury risk. Now Maryland has a problem, and it's not the first time it happened. I remember, it might have been a decade ago now, the Iowa Hawkeyes were really injury bitten, or they always got hurt. It seemed like something was going on. They wasn't really sure what was happening. So it might not be the gear, but then it came out that it was their off-season conditioning. I think a lot of guys had to get hospitalized because they were working out too hard, and then they made changes to the program. And now Iowa doesn't have those same injury issues. So do you think it's something inside the program, whether it be gear-related or training-related? They seem to really get injured every year. It's not like this is a freak year for Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, just watching games being played, and you look at Cam Newton, for instance, because he's Maryland-sponsored, his cleats are these high cleats. They come up to, where would be like a high ankle sprain would occur, and they cover that area. Maryland doesn't wear those cleats. They wear these low top cleats. And I see a lot of, if you go to a high school game, you see a lot of kids wearing these low top cleats. And I think the reason why is because they're customizable. They look more flashy. But even from when I remember playing, Pee Wee football, high school football, our cleats were higher than what they are now. So you see a lot of like ankle injuries rolling. Are these players getting taped before games for their ankles? Wide receivers wear all low cleats. I mean, Julio Jones has a foot problem every year, and he's a Maryland guy, but he wears the low cleats. So I don't know if it's maybe the shoes that they're designing now. They're getting to a point where they're such a low weight, almost like a cross country type shoe, because you're looking for like the lowest amount of ounces, that the material they're putting these in are just rolling when they go, and they're twisting all these ankles. Because I feel like maybe Matt could talk on this, but being a coach and stuff. But I feel like within the last, let's say 10 years, I've heard more about ACLs than I remember all through the 90s watching NFL football games. So maybe you could talk on that, Matt.
Yeah, Matt, you have anything to add?
Well, one of the things with that is that players are getting much faster. They're getting bigger. There's more muscle on their frames. And those ligaments in their knees that they're tearing a lot easier, it's a result of just athletes now being in much better shape, being much faster, being stronger. So the amount of force that they're applying when they're making some of these cuts is putting their joints at risk. One of the things that I had looked at is you look at also what the equipment looked like, say 1993, 95. Like you go on YouTube and you watch, because one of the things I did over the winter was watching some of the old Florida State films to see, what it's like when they were winning games, and also to see what that offense looked like when Mark Richt was the offensive coordinator, when they were really scoring a lot of points. You look at the equipment and like it's almost comical how boxy the players look because the pads that they're wearing are so thick and bulky, where now everything is so speed specific that players outside of their shoulder pads and helmet almost look like they're not wearing pads at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I do challenge people to go ahead and do that. Go watch old film. It's something I brought up before when we were talking about basketball. Go watch some games from like the early 90s, mid 90s, and just see how different the games were. I don't want to say they're not slow paced because a lot of those 90s Florida State teams, like they had work done. A bunch of other guys, like they even had Deion Sanders back then. I know Tony Romo says that he can't tackle, but man, he was sure fast and exciting out there to watch. So, I mean, I don't know if it's the equipment, if it's something, but yeah, in the 90s, you really didn't hear much about ACL. And back then, the ACL was the kiss of death. If you got it, you were done. It wasn't like you get one, it is a routine like they are these days where, okay, and like Deshaun Watson, he got hurt at practice. I don't remember like anyone getting their ACLs torn in practice. Not a starting quarterback like that. There's no way. So it has to be something. It might even be the turf because they started to go to like these hybrid synthetic turfs.
You beat me to it.
Even high schools are doing that. And when I played high school football, a couple of local fields went to that. And I'll tell you, it's not fun running on that stuff. It's kind of squishy is how I would describe it. And that's at a high school level. Maybe college and NFL is different, but you don't have that natural, like you can't bounce off it like you do. You kind of sink in. It's how I would imagine running on kind of like a trampoline, but not to that extent for people who haven't played sports that might do something, or kind of like running on a mattress maybe. You probably would never ever do that. But if you haven't, try to go to one of those fields and just kind of walk around, run a little bit on the field, and you'll kind of get the feel of what I'm talking about. And I think that could add into the injury bug. But that's one of the things, and I'll use that to segue into the college football rankings. That's one of the things that the committee was kind of talking about. They were very vague. They gave some reasonings on their rankings this week, and they were saying like, well, you have to take injuries into account. And I think they were really talking about Alabama. That was why their reasoning why they're number 2 instead of number 1. How about just saying Alabama hasn't beat anyone? I don't think, well, LSU shouldn't even be ranked, but that's besides the point. They left them in the rankings, I think, just to say that Alabama has a ranked win. But yeah, you have to take injuries into account when you're making the college rankings. But overall, I don't think you should hurt a team if one guy's hurt or two guys are hurt just because you don't want to get that TV money. If the team has the wins, put them in the playoffs. Who cares if a guy's out? And that's just my opinion. Matt, what are your thoughts? Because you didn't really get to talk there for college football. And you can save your Jimbo talk for last. We're going to end on that this week. Your Florida State love for all things Kelly and Florida State.
Fire Kelly. But actually, one of the things I was looking at with Clemson being in there, I don't know if you saw this, but there was the accusation of Clemson saying that they were cheating, saying that Clemson had an illegal laptop on their sidelines and was trying to pull an investigation. Did you see anything on that?
Yeah, I actually saw that as the game was going on. I think, because I'm down here in Raleigh, for people that don't know, but Dave Doran, the NC State coach, made it a point. I think it might have been, was it the halftime interview? He made it a point, I want to say during the game, or one of the commentators said that NC State's aware of a laptop being on the field on Clemson's sideline, which to me is kind of odd. And to me, some of the times they do that, that's an automatic forfeit. So whenever it was brought to my attention during the game, you would think that by bringing it to the announcers that the ACC officials would have said something, given them some type of penalty. Like I don't know how you handle that, but that's basically illegal. That's kind of like cheating. Well, whenever he said it, of course, Dabo did the basic defense of, yes, we're cheating, because he immediately got all defensive and said, well, the NC State guys were ripping the towel off of our quarterback, which is what, I don't know if you guys watch the game, but Bradley Chubb, every time he hit what's that guy's, Bryant, the Clemson Tigers quarterback, he's the big defensive end for NC State. Yeah. He'd sack him, and then he'd take the towel off him. and walk over to the other sideline and just throw it so that he didn't have the towel to like dry his hands off. And in the middle of the game, the ref, I think it was like the second or third time he did it, one of the officials came over and like told him to knock it off, and he shook the official's hand like, "No, I'm just playing." But he was taking the towels, and that was Dabo's defense. He was like, "Oh, we might have had a laptop on the sideline to order more towels." That's what he said. And he's like, "Maybe you should investigate their sideline behavior." But there's a little bit different feel to it for me. If you're doing gamesmanship, if you're talking trash, like taking towels, or he said that someone pushed one of his players, one of the coaches pushed a player, which I didn't see any film of, which you would think Clemson guys would have been posting in his defense. I didn't see any of that, but the laptop thing was real, and he didn't really address it to me. And to me, that's worrisome, because this isn't the first time that there's been a scandal in the ACC. Last year, Louisville was running plays from Wake Forest playbook. They had the playbook. The announcer gave it right to him from Wake Forest. So it's a little bit more alarming to me that the ACC didn't speak on this, because it makes me think that the ACC has rigged officiating. And I mean, there's been cases of it in the past. Matt, you're closer at home to me, but as a Florida State fan, now you're playing Clemson this week and possibly the refs, because they need Clemson to win, is what it looked like to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I always kind of felt like, because of the way that Florida State was winning games over the last couple of years, I've kind of felt like that target has really grown on their back. So typically the calls that they were getting, they're not getting this year. And especially, like, this is the year that if teams are going to pile on, this is the year that they have to do it. Before Jimbo goes out and sweeps out the cellar, they have to pile on at this point. But I don't think that they necessarily have to bandwagon for Clemson, because they still have Miami that could potentially win out and still bring in the ACC into that playoff contention. You know, to me, the thing that's more frustrating is the way that they're still trying to prop up Alabama. You would think that at some point ESPN's going to learn not to try to put all this stock in one particular team or one particular conference. I mean, they tried doing that the year Florida State won the national championship, with how well, you know, Auburn was a team of destiny and the kick six and all this other stuff, and it blew up in their face. And then they talked last year about how Alabama was so unstoppable and how they could beat the Cleveland Browns and everything else, and Clemson knocked them off. It's like, if they would just shut up, and you'd sent that message about how they're trying to establish like that separation of sport and politics, they should just call it, just be unbiased towards it. Because clearly at this point they have a clear bias towards the SEC by keeping LSU ranked, even though they lost to Troy. You know, you have Alabama, who they really don't have the quality wins on their schedule to justify them being in that top bracket. It's okay for right now, because with the upcoming weeks there's going to be enough time for everything to filter out. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Auburn doesn't knock him off, because Malzahn at this point is playing for his job. So if he doesn't win out, he could go from, on one hand, potentially beating Alabama. He just knocked off A&M and put someone on the hot seat. He could go from job security to being fired within the next couple weeks as well, because of the way that the schedule's lined up here at the tail end of the season.
Well, looking at that, the Auburn thing, they bumped them up, and a lot of people were complaining, saying they're going to lose the next two games. I think they put them up there just so that they could say that Alabama has these quality wins, and I think they played Georgia this week. So either way, they're kind of like in a position where Auburn wins. Auburn could beat Georgia. I could easily see that. And then Georgia doesn't fall as much, because they're like, well, we still are going to get that top 10 SEC championship matchup, because I think Georgia already locked up the SEC. I don't think that they're going to go ahead and lose to Georgia Tech. I know that game's usually closer just because it's a rivalry game. But on the side of that, putting some teams in the tail end of the top 25 at this point, it just doesn't make any sense. And to me, I really don't care. I know it's like a new thing. They should have just waited. Why do the college football playoff rankings, the mock rankings? Do you really think these big wigs are taking it that serious, where they're all sitting down as like a mock meeting 8 weeks into the season, where they're like, all right, this is life or death, we have to put all of our energy into it? No, there's no way they're doing that. I think they should bring back the BCS. I sent you guys some numbers on that, where now when BCS was created in 1998, there weren't that many stats. So there was only like 2 or 3 guys doing them. Now I think Massey has, I had the Massey computers up. I think they were one of the formula. They might not have been for the original one, but I'll see. Right now there's actually more analytics to go ahead to go back to a computer thing. I think there's 40 something. Once this loads, I'll give you guys the actual number. But they're pulling in different sources. This is looking at strength of schedule against 2 or 3 different computers. Then you're looking at ways where ones that calculate wins better. So the more formulas that you have, the more varied you're going to have, the more even across the board it's going to be. So right now there are actually 93 computer rankings that are out there. And they don't have it updated for this week. I'll go ahead and tweet it out so people that are interested. But last week's still had Georgia number 1, Alabama number 2, and then Notre Dame number 3. It'll probably be the same this week. But it gives you a couple different, they get rid of the low, they get rid of a couple of the high, just like you would do in regular statistics, and they bring in that actual variables. And now there's actually more computers doing it, 93 of them. You get a better feel than just 8 people in a room or however many people are even on the committee. I don't know. But these don't really matter much. Go ahead and go into our last topic. I'll give you guys a chance to talk here too. Coaching rumors, Matt, I'll get back to you first. Jimbo Fisher. We talked last week. Florida already fired their coach. Florida State's probably going to have, well, I would say a worse record, but it's going to be comparable. Do you think that he would leave or be fired after just one season? I mean, he's probably going to be, would he even be on the hot seat? He just won a national championship a couple years ago. I know there's some smoke on this, but I'll let you go ahead.
I think there's smoke just because with the SEC and the SEC money, it's always a possibility. Last year he was linked to LSU and it didn't pan out. Right now the rumor stands that someone's not going to be back, and it seems like A&M has really been hot with trying to get rid of him. Since the start of the year, they've kind of said it was boom or bust, and he wasn't able to produce, so that was so linking Jimbo Fisher to that. And on one hand, it does make sense, but I think sometimes you got to watch what you wish for. Jimbo Fisher is a good coach, and I don't want to see him leave, but definitely I think where he made a lot of mistakes is with retaining coaches that were not producing, and it was leading to the issues that you have now where players aren't following the system, they're not playing well, they're not playing at a level that they should be. And I mean, when you're excited over barely beating Syracuse, you know that you're having a really off year. It's like to just barely be being, usually that was a pencil it in, this game's done at halftime type game. And it's like you're holding your breath thinking, well, how are we going to screw this up? It's like third down, fire Kelly, because you know he's going to give up either a first down or a touchdown. And I think they're going to, at least for right now, at a bare minimum, Fisher's going to have to clean out almost the entire staff. And he's going to give himself an opportunity to fix this on his own. If he has the same kind of result next year, the boosters may end up intervening and trying to get him fired. I think the thing to watch is if Fisher does go, who they're going to be replaced with. I know one of the people that really is taking a high stock in it is Willie Taggart, who's at Oregon. And then I don't know if he is a Florida guy who recruits Florida. He's only been at Oregon a year. There's a possibility they might be able to lure him down. But actually, the wild card in it might be Lane Kiffin to see. I mean, right now he has Florida Atlantic in number 1 in Conference USA. Their offense with Kendall Browse is scoring like in video game type numbers. You know, maybe you bring that kind of energy in if Fisher decides to leave.
Well, I'll tell you, good thing you brought up Lane Kiffin, because I didn't have a way to work him into the show. But just like I said, follow Mike Leach on Twitter. He says a bunch of funny stuff. Lane Kiffin has been going all out on ESPN. And if you notice, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, ESPN was always throwing articles up on him. He started attacking them hard, making fun of Alabama, because ESPN was putting out some stuff Nick Saban said about the media being rat poison. So every time someone tweets something about Florida Atlantic, Lane Kiffin like intervenes and it's like, stop talking about us. You're going to make us lose and stuff like that. He was tweeting pictures of rats getting caught in traps. So definitely give him a follow. He's pretty funny. I think actually Tennessee fans want him to be rehired. There's going to be a bunch of different jobs in the SEC. You have Arkansas. I don't see how they can keep Bielema. I still don't know why Bielema left Wisconsin. He had a great thing going there. And it even looks like it's more, he would have had 10 win seasons for the past 4 or 5 years there. Because Barry Alvarez was overlooking the program. He would have been like the greatest coach in Wisconsin's history. Like there would have been no drop off from him to Chris and whoever they had in between, Gary Anderson or whatever. So their job's probably going to be open. Then you have, isn't Ole Miss, do they have a interim coach? I don't know.
I think they do.
Florida's open. They were saying that they're going after Dan Mullen, who's at Mississippi State. So that could be another opening. Tennessee's probably open. The one guy that I know is trying to get a head coaching job is Les Miles, a Michigan man. I wish he would get hired. And he would do great at a school like Arkansas. Think about it. He was recruiting for how many years at LSU? That's a neighboring state, if I get my geography right. That's a neighboring state where he knows, that's a talent-rich state too. He's right there. Give him a call. He's running close to what Brett Bielema runs. And so the offense isn't going to be that big of a drop-off. He's going to have the talent, and he can pull in those extra guys. And that's even closer. I'm going to make myself sound like an idiot. It's going to be close. It's close to Texas, too, so he can go ahead and recruit that as well. It's already fits his system. It's in a conference that he knows very well. I mean, yeah, he struggled with Nick Saban, but who hasn't? And he's going to get them back to where Bobby Petrino had him. So that's where I would look for him. And if Arkansas doesn't get him on the phone, then Arkansas deserves to lose. Because I don't know who else they're going to get that's better than him. You hire a rival coach that was successful in your conference right next door, and he's available. And he said that he wants to coach. So get him on the call if they get rid of him. Nebraska's the other program. I think just looking at the college football rankings, wrapping this up for myself, everyone's knocking Wisconsin. The Big Ten can't help it that Nebraska has turned out to be a dud in the West. You have Iowa. They're pretty solid. They just crushed Ohio State. I loved it. But you have this game with Nebraska coming up, or they already beat them. Penn State's playing Nebraska. But I mean, Nebraska's supposed to be that team that boosts their schedule. Instead, they already beat them, I'm pretty sure. And it's doing nothing for them. The college football committee is still saying that they have like one of the weakest schedules. So there's nothing really the Big Ten can do. They're not going to rebalance divisions. Once they do that, then you have a ton of different things. But I'll end it on that for myself. I'll let you guys go ahead and go around the horn one more time. You guys can talk about whatever you want. Finish up the show. We'll start with you, Rick.
No one will be fired at Nebraska. I don't see him coming back. Just don't know who they're going to find or bring in or do whatever. But that program's probably the most disappointing in all the Big Ten. So Major League Baseball free agency started, so we'll see who goes. My guess is the biggest change that you're going to see is probably going to be Eric Hosmer to the Red Sox. Red Sox need to make some damage, and they did some damage when they put Mitch Moreland out there on the field, a guy who's too fat, too slow, and too sloppy to field first base. I mean, if you want King Kong Bundy out there on first base, they found it,
That was
because he wasn't getting the first base, not unless there was a freaking a number 6 and a number 8 on the McDonald's menu that was down there at the end of the line. So, I mean, I think that's going to be the big signing that's going to help a team make the change and need to make a change to make a bigger impact. A lot more coaching changes are happening as well, so we'll wait and see that. And also, do not miss the 30 for 30. I will give ESPN a compliment. They're doing a 30 for 30 on Ric Flair and his sad life that he led. So, living a sad life outside of the wrestling ring, pretty much selling his soul pretty much right now. So
is that tongue in cheek?
It's definitely been good. What?
Is that a slam on him?
Night. For what? No, that's a slam on ESPN. No, but Ric Flair's he's had some terrible problems and terrible demons. He couldn't separate wrestling Ric Flair from Rick the average, person, and that's the sad part. And that's how he ended up in bankruptcy, and pretty much is, doing $5,000 a show and showing up at house shows like in Altoona in front of maybe 500 fans, 600 fans. I mean, I got tickets to the show and I got a free comp ticket. So, I mean, they didn't get money from me just because I know the promoter. So
What a big shot.
I know. I'm a big shot. Whenever wrestling comes to town, I get free tickets. That's all I know.
Hey, I don't know if I like you talking trash on Ric Flair, dude. He was at Michigan signing of the Stars. He was our MC. He was there.
Ric Flair. WCW 1990 reference right there. No, but Ric Flair is one of my favorite wrestlers, so it's just sad what he's become, and you can even look at how much damage. And every wrestler will say alcoholism was definitely prevalent in his life, and it's true. I mean, anybody who's seen him outside the ring like I have, there was days where I saw him barely get to his car out of an arena because he was so loaded.
Well, I'll say on that actually reminded me when you said about the ESPN 30 for 30. There are rumors right now that Disney is going to buy 21 Century Fox or whatever the hell that's called. So they're going to buy all the Fox movies, which is going to be big for the sports world because I don't know if it's going to include the television package, which Fox is usually the other huge bidder on the NFL, and they own that 4 p.m. America's Game primetime slot most of the time. So keep an eye on that. That's a big deal. I've heard conflicting rumors that it's going to happen, and then I've heard some people that were just random on the internet saying that it was already a dead deal. But if Disney buys all the Fox stuff, and they don't buy the TV streaming for Fox, that's where you're going to see someone like Facebook or Amazon potentially buy the Fox cable networks, which includes Fox Sports 1, which broadcasts the Big Ten, the Pac-12 network, and everything like that. And also, if you don't like ESPN and you still want to see Ric Flair, I think he's going to be on Coach Harbaugh's podcast, so check that out. He's going to get Ric Flair, and he just had Judge Judy on. Classic Coach Harbaugh.
Is Judge Judy a Michigan grad?
No, she's just a fan of ours, Rick. Just like a bunch of different other people. Rich Eisen was just on. Rich Eisen, he was talking about his 40-yard dash speeds. Classic guys. But Nick, what's your stuff? Anything to end on?
Yeah, college basketball season's about to start. Another preseason ranking with Puke #1. I'm just not a big fan of it. I'm interested to see what happens this year. FBI is involved. If we look at the top 10, I'm just glancing at it right now. There's 1, 2, maybe 2. Well, let's say in the top 20, 3 schools under investigation. NCAA's dropped the ball. I mean, they've dropped the ball multiple times in college basketball with stuff that's going on, and these recruits are sitting at Arizona #3. What's going to happen there? Are they going to be able to play all year? Are they going to be able to make the NCAA tournament? These are things we're going to find out. I think there's going to be other schools listed. Should be a crazy year for basketball. Big Ten wise, I'm not too worried. Maryland should be just fine. And I'll be at the Penn State game. I'm going to make sure I'm going to get front row seats to watch that blowout. And Maryland just, run through them. And Penn State needs to get a new basketball coach. That's another thing if they want to be able to compete in the Big Ten. Just not going to cut it. But anyway, should be a good season. I could check in later with you and give you some more updates on it as I go to some of these games. But, yeah, we'll see. FBI.
Yeah, and Nick is a basketball coach. So I'm trying to diversify some of our guests here. Matty B, he's a football guy. And Rick David, he's into all the Major League Baseball stuff. He knows more about the trades and everything. I think he predicted 3 of the trades on the show before they actually happened this past season. So it's good to have a basketball guy come on and give us some insight on that. Penn State, they'll never have a successful program. They've been in the Big Ten for 3 decades now? They haven't invested. They'd rather win.
No, it's sad.
Yeah. They'd rather win women's volleyball tournament championships or wrestling or something.
Wrestling.
I mean, that's just what it is because you're so close to Philly. There's no reason why. There's no reason Villanova should win a championship when you're Penn State and you can't even win your conference or even, they don't do divisions of basketball, but you can't even come close. You can't even finish in the top 5. That's embarrassing.
Can't even get a 500 record.
Well, you got to look at it this way, too. You're looking at Northwestern being inside the top 20 rankings to start the year. Yeah. I mean, come on. Penn State has the Bryce Jordan Center, which can seat how many people? They should be able to at least, bring some recruits and turn on a video on the Jumbotron.
That's a nice stadium. I saw Bigfoot there once. Bigfoot Gravedigger.
I mean, hey, you probably had more fans in the stands for that than the Penn State basketball season combined.
It was rabid, dude. I caught a T-shirt. You should have saw all the people trying to rip it out of my hands.
I want to go to Nick's point there on Arizona. With Sean Miller as a coach, they will disappoint you. I mean, there are so many years where they're like ranked in the top 10, and then they figure a way out of it. Sean Miller will disappoint you.
Well, I think that's what happens.
Maryland didn't hire him.
What?
Whenever you pay for recruits, that's what happens. You pay for top guys, and then you can't coach them. Look at Calipari. There's no reason why he should go ahead and not have more national championships. There's no reason. He had how many top 10 classes, number 1 classes overall. That's just poor coaching. So I think the same thing with Miller. You get some guys doing some shady things, and tied into football, that's exactly why no one's talking about Chip Kelly. Do some shady things when you hate recruiting or whatever that much that you're paying dudes just to sign guys. Like, it's not going to work out for you unless you get hired at a big school that recruits itself. And basketball's in a whole slew of mess with this. You can't go ahead and give Chip Kelly a show, whatever that clause was that I talked about a couple weeks ago. You can't give him that and then have almost every top basketball program and coaches be involved in this and not have them banned. Look what happened to Jim Tressel. Jim Tressel had the tattoo thing. He got kicked out. I know they said that he lied on the investigation. How about all these other coaches that lied and said, well, I didn't know what was going on? You know what's going on in your program. That's the same bullshit line that Joe Paterno gave. And then whenever it came out that he actually had made the statements, then he was stuck. Because you know what happens, especially in basketball, whenever you only have 12 guys or however many are on your team. It's not that hard to keep up with them. So
yeah, and just to talk on that a little bit. I mean, it's sad when they bring on Rick Pitino and Jay Billis interviews them, and and makes out like Rick Pitino did nothing wrong during this interview, like he didn't know anything, and he thinks he'll be coaching again in college basketball. He should be nowhere near college basketball. I mean, they got to clean it up. I mean, you got Sean Miller. Maryland almost hired him. Thank God we didn't. I mean, Maryland was in, stuff in, the late 80s that they had stuff going on. So it's a almost like a pay for play system. I mean, it probably goes all the way down to football as well. I'm just glad we're an Under Armour school, not Adidas or Nike. And I'm interested to see some of these schools that recently switched to Under Armour if they were doing it beforehand. Wisconsin, they've kind of come out of nowhere. Wisconsin wasn't known to be a basketball school. I mean, I don't want to kick that name out there like I know something, but some of these schools that I'm looking at the top 20 right now, you got Minnesota number 15.
They have a Patino, dude.
The other one.
Like father like son, maybe?
Yeah, like
I
father
don't know.
like son. That's what I would say.
So, it's 15 and 16, Minnesota, Louisville. I mean, Minnesota? Come on now. So, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting year. I think a lot of stuff will come out throughout the season, and hopefully it doesn't ruin the NCAA tournament. I really like going to that every year, seeing different schools. I happen to see Villanova every year. A couple years ago, I was able to see Kansas, Indiana, Kentucky. So I plan on doing that again this year up in the Pittsburgh area, and I can cover that if you need me to, but it's going to be exciting. Yeah,
and I'll be checking out the Big Ten ACC champion, whatever they call that thing, challenge at the end of the month. I'm going to go into the Cheaters' Den, UNC, watch my boys Michigan play there. Rumor has it whenever I get there, I also get to pick up a free degree and put that on my resume. So
if I give you a couple bucks, pick me up one.
You don't even have to take a class, dude. You just have to write a paper.
Start me up.
Matt, you have anything to end on this week?
just the Sixers are up 46-44 at halftime, and they are not in last place. So the process is working.
Keep living that dream. 76ers, the process. I want to get you a shirt that says the process with all their records underneath for each year. Maybe just the winning percentages. It can't be good. But look at how the Cavs, dude, they had all those number one picks. It didn't pan out until LeBron came back. I just think basketball is too top heavy. You need a star. The process isn't going to get you a star every year. And plus, they were drafting stars that were hurt anyway. Or they were getting into bar fights. Isn't that what they did? That guy from Duke.
I think you're right.
He went into the bar fight right after. I don't even remember how. You don't remember the guys that aren't in the league anymore. They probably even are in the league. Except ESPN only talks about the same three guys, so. But I think that's it for the show this week. Go ahead and... Matt, what did you just send? Matt sent me a Wolfpack Nation with it all. Is it spelled wrong? Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. Hey, we don't know who took that photo. Was that done with the Clemson laptop? Did they do some type of photo booth shot there? We don't know where that came from. That looks like it's from the sideline. I'll leave it at that. But that's the end of our show. Go ahead and follow us on Facebook. We're doing this live on Facebook live every Tuesday night around 9 o'clock. Trying to get some technical stuff, so it might be a little bit after that, but bear with us. Follow us on Twitter and YouTube. You can follow all that stuff. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.